You know, I'm not a hero. I'm not a traitor. I'm an ordinary American. Government always has strong incentives to make examples out of people, particularly in the national security space. They want to protect their authority, to shield programs from oversight, and really from criticism and review by the public.
Housing unit at night, and I couldn't sleep, and I would look at the news, and it was almost like a glossing over of what had happened in Iraq. Let's forget about all the bad things that have happened because it's working out in the end. But like what I was seeing on the ground was not that, and I was very worried about that. The video stands on its own. It explains an enormous amount of not just this moment, but of what the reality of warfare looks like.
Bushmaster, Crazy Horse, we have individuals going to the scene, looks like possibly picking up bodies and weapons.
Let me engage.
Hey, we need to stop that so we can get down there. We need to go south. You see my location?
Roger. Break. Crazy Horse 1-8, request permission to engage individual.
Picking up the wounded. Yeah, we're trying to get permission to engage. Come on, let us shoot.
Bushmaster, Crazy Horse 1-8.
We're taking him.
Bushmaster, Crazy Horse 1-8.
It's Bushmaster 7, go ahead.
Roger, we have a black SUV or bongo truck picking up the bodies. Request permission to engage.
Bushmaster 7, Roger. This is Bushmaster 7, Roger, engage.
1-8, engage. Clear.
Come on. Oh yeah, look at that, right through the windshield.
So, it's the first time I've played that on this Candidates for Assange. I think probably everyone here is familiar with it, has seen it, but maybe we have people that, watching that haven't seen it. I'm still shocked sometimes when I learn of people that have not yet seen that and don't really know the full story about what Chelsea Manning leaked to Assange, and why he is such a target is really revealing war crimes and Vault 7. And of course, we have a lot of people that just don't like him because of revealing, the DNC leaks in 2016, which is, I want to thank all of you guys for being here. I consistently have a really hard time getting Democrats. We're trying really hard, to break through. But, this isn't about party, and this is just an issue, as we all know, it's an issue that affects everyone, and that's what we have to kind of break through. So I wanted to start off, I really want to thank Misty, first of all, for being here, because I know, I've had a lot of discussions with people like in the activist community that have kind of lost faith in electoral politics. And I understand that, I really do. But it's funny, Phil, I watched the Chicago 7, and there's a scene in there where the guy playing Abby Hoffman and Hayden have this huge argument. And it's basically that right there, because Hayden ends up, in Congress, I believe. I don't know his whole history. Somebody might know better than me here, but so he's really
California State Legislature for Tom Hayden.
He what?
California State Legislature.
Thank you. Okay. So, and he's also wait a minute, Jane Fonda's husband? Is that right?
He was a man of many accomplishments. Yes. Including marrying Jane Fonda. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
He was a great guy. I got to know Tom for the last maybe 15 years of his life. And he really was a great guy. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you get around, Matt. But I think that argument there was between those two guys was that, no, we need activism in the street. No, we need to change it within the electoral politics. And I think that we really have to hit things, especially issues like Assange and freedom of speech, freedom of the press. We've really got to hit it at all angles that we can. So I want to thank you all. Let me make sure I've got everyone that's here. Oh, wait, hi, Eric. Bring him in too. Okay, great. So you guys want to just start off? Well, actually, Misty, why don't we start with you and just like tell a little bit for anyone here that doesn't know who you are. I don't know how that's possible if you're paying attention to the Assange case, because Misty's been at this for years and is like online all the time talking about it. So, but you want to tell a little bit about your show and just your activism work that you've done? Oh, you're muted.
I do that a lot. That's why I usually don't mute, because I always forget. I actually have a shirt that says you're on mute, so I can wear that to remind myself. So I'm obviously Misty Winston, as it says on the screen. I was always an Assange and WikiLeaks supporter from the time that they came onto the scene. Very kind of passively, though. I, read the leaks and I bought merch and I made donations and I shared the work and all of that stuff. I was involved and I knew what was going on and things like that. I didn't really get into hyperdrive and become sort of obsessive, which if you know me, you know that obsessive is probably a good word, until he was essentially kidnapped from the Ecuadorian embassy in 2019. So I've been really, really active, both on the ground, online, just in all forms, in every way possible. Well, maybe not every way possible, every way I can think of. I've been incredibly active since then. I've organized events in DC. I've organized events here in Ohio, where I'm from, and where I live. I talk about it again, obsessively. I cover it on a regular basis I host a show. It's an activist group called Action for Assange. We also host shows online, regular vigils. We just started those back up after a little hiatus. But we have, done tons of shows. I don't even know how many hundreds of shows that we've done covering not just Assange, but also other political prisoners, other whistleblowers, threats to press freedom, anything that kind of falls under that umbrella. We cover that kind of stuff on there. So yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay, great. And well, Matt, why don't you introduce yourself? And I'm going to pull up this photo of you from last week.
Okay, I'm Matt Ho. I ran, not a current candidate. I was a candidate, but I've been a supporter of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks for a number of years now. Thanks, Kelly. That's I spoke. I briefed the United Nations Security Council last week on the Ukraine war, as well as the genocide in Gaza. And that's a still photo from that. So I appreciate it, Kelly. Thank you. I'm Kelly's co-host, and really happy to have you all joining us. Many of you for the first time. Phil, it's good to see you back. And Misty, of course, thank you for everything you do. And Kelly, you want me to ask someone to introduce themselves now?
We can go around. Phil, yeah. You want to?
Sure. I think this is my third or fourth time on, which I really appreciate being on and with different guests every time. I am a candidate for United States Senate in Wisconsin. I've been a libertarian, active in the libertarian movement and politics for about 10 years, having run for office a couple of times before, but following along with the Assange issue, preaching the right attitude that the government should have about such things and trying to make people aware of the issue. And obviously that's heightened in the last year or so. More recently, we did, my daughter and I, a Christmas Day protest at Senator Tammy Baldwin's office, trying to move her and other people. Participated in a postcard mailing to all members of Congress to sign on to HR 934. Regularly call Ron Johnson, Tammy Baldwin, and Mark Pocan, who's my representative, so to speak, in the House, to try to get them involved as well. Of course, to no avail, because two of the three current representatives I have are Democrats, and for whatever reason, that party, I think, used to, or at least thought it was, champions of civil rights. And the ultimate civil right is the right to know what your government is doing and to have access to information. And they obviously don't care about that right now at all. So in the heat of the campaign season, and a lot more people are getting turned on to this. I work closely with Ann Batiza, who, if you don't know who she is, she's a good follow and very active nationwide, as well as in Wisconsin. And she's actually receiving an award at our Libertarian Party of Wisconsin convention in a couple of weeks because of her work. Even though she's not a libertarian, we like to reach out to people who do good work on issues that we care about outside of our party and technically outside of our movement. So that's what I'm all about, is reaching out to people, trying to get them aware of the situation and why they should care.
why it's so ridiculous that Julian's in prison in the first place, the obvious reasons why, the miscarriage of justice that the Department of the DOJ is attempting right now, and trying to get them to care, but it's not an easy task.
Right, for sure. Okay, William Henry, and you're in Indiana's 2nd district. Okay, let me. Oh, are you on mute? We could hear you a minute ago. Something happened with your audio.
Okay. I am in Indiana's 2nd congressional district. Okay. This is my 2nd run for the district in the last 2 years. I ran as lieutenant governor in 2020 with Donald Rainwater in the state of Indiana. We achieved about 12.5% of the statewide vote that year, and we were pushing back on the mandates and all of the overreach from the government that year as well. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I served in Afghanistan and Kuwait. I earned the Bronze Star in Afghanistan for journalism work and public affairs work over there, telling the story of what our troops were doing to the people back home. Same thing in Kuwait, but we were a logistical unit. And we also helped with the pullout of Iraq during that time as well. So had a lot of hands-on stuff during some pretty crucial times, especially the journalism realm. And a lot of this stuff was dropping during that time. You know, you had all of this leakage of these documents and these fraud, waste, abuse, and outright crimes that were happening, especially in these war areas. So I think that these individuals definitely need to be, they don't need to be charged for releasing the truth to the public. I'm a whistleblower myself here in the state of Indiana. I would blow the whistle on the Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs, who was misspending and had fraud, waste, and abuse issues themselves. So, I know what it's like to be targeted. I know what it's like to be made out to, try to make you a bad guy because of your bringing the truth to the light. And that can be very hurtful and damaging to individuals in their careers. And they don't do it for their own good. They do it for the good of everyone else. And everyone doesn't understand how that actually works. And the way that the military and the government wants to play it off is these people have somehow compromised security of our government or our military, when these things have been pushed forward and really during operations that have already happened. It's already in the past. So this stuff isn't compromising current operations. It's showing and bringing to light some of the things that we did inappropriately, incorrectly, and outright, blatantly during our operations.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I think Eric might be having trouble connecting there. Are you in now? Okay, great. Okay, we'll go to...
Yep, I'm on.
Okay, good. We'll go to James now.
Hi, I'm James Siniak. I'm running in the 6th district in Indiana for Congress. This is my 3rd run. I ran locally last year, and then the year before that, I ran for U.S. Senate. I was a libertarian. I believe that we can make a big difference, and especially on things like the First Amendment. And I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to hear from individuals who even know extensively more than I do. But this is definitely a cause I support, and I appreciate being here.
Great. Okay. And Eric, we'll hope your connection stays here. Your turn.
No, I do too. I apologize. Yeah,
okay.
my satellite internet is terrible out here. I'm also in Indiana, so I cut out a little bit here. I heard someone else mention they were from Indiana, so I'd like to figure out who that was eventually. But anyway,
yes, it's 3 of you. It's
everyone.
Well, not everyone. Phil's in Wisconsin, but I do that on purpose because I think it's great if you guys can connect, outside of here. And you're maybe, let's see, we have the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th district. So yeah, maybe we did this at California, Florida, and then those candidates, get to know each other outside of this platform. But go ahead, please. Oh, okay. I think he froze.
Good. Okay.
Oh. So do you want to say anything about, why you would support House Resolution 934? Or? Okay, we might have satellite issues here. It's okay. It happens. Tech stuff, right, Misty? All the time.
Yes, hate it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. We'll just let Eric keep trying to come back in, I guess. We'll see what happens. I wanted to show something that I found. I'm sure, Misty, you've heard about this. The artist, I think it's McCabe, did something called Belmarsh Live, and she's got the trailer. I think it was in Strasbourg and other places. And I think she's German. But they reconstructed his cell and have it in a trailer and had people come, and like visitors could go in, they shut the door and they leave you in there, and then you can write a note to Assange. But this is 59 seconds. And, I watched it and I just thought, wow, 59 seconds. Imagine times how many that he's been in there for. So I'm just going to play this clip. It's from the exhibit. It's a visitor and activist that went in. I should have explained that all the noise is to simulate like prison noises, what you might hear there. And then I've got, here we go. Here's a photo. So on the left here is the inside of that. And that's the size. It's a replica. And I think this journalist guy here was a prisoner in Turkey, I believe. And he said it reminded him of it. But yeah, so it's an exhibit that you can go in and see what it's like to be Assange living in this for the crime of publishing things that Manning leaked.
The truth.
Crazy. The truth, yes.
Yeah, the truth. And I can't tell you how many seconds. He said that's 59 seconds. I can't tell you how many seconds Julian's been in prison. I can tell you it's been 1,813 days since he was arrested. So however many seconds that equals, it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, also I wanted to show, let's see. Okay, bear with me just a second. I wanted to show a photo of the people that have now signed on to House Resolution 934, except I forgot to put Gosar, who was the founder, because he's at the top. So we're missing one on
Cori
here.
Bush, too.
Yes. Well, isn't that her right here in the middle?
Oh, is it?
Corey? Yeah. So Talib and Cori Bush are just fairly recent, like what, this month and last month?
Cori Bush just signed 2 days ago.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I think we're making progress. I have to give another shout out to Paula. Let's see, let's bring Eric back on, who has been relentless in Paula Iacella. She's with Assange Defense Boston, relentless in calling. And just bear with me a little bit. It's a little wonky moving back and forth here, but I've got, she's been tweeting constantly. I'll try to show that in a second, where she lists even Democrats that are against the TikTok ban. And she's been calling, like targeting those people to kind of tie in and say, like, look, this is all about control of information and control of free speech. And so she's been targeting them too, as well as, let's see, so we have, I don't know if all of you, most of you are probably aware, but let's see, so the letter that was in November here, the letter to Biden that McGovern, I guess, created, but it was signed by all the people that are on that screen I just showed you that now have signed House Resolution 934, but we're still missing several people. It seems strange to me that they signed this letter, but haven't yet signed House Resolution 934. And as Paula said, it takes time. These Congress people have many issues they're dealing with, but it's so urgent. So we have Ayanna Pressley still, and I think most everybody on this page hasn't signed, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Cori Bush,
Cori
that's
Bush
the only one, I
did it.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pramila Jayapal actually promised the Seattle Action for Assange crew, Amber, and those folks out there that she was a supporter and would sign on to any legislation that came through. So we are kind of targeting her for a little extra pressure because she gave her verbal commitment to the activists out there.
Oh, good. Good.
Do you think that signing that letter made them a target, though? That there's being more pressure put on them to not participate now?
Probably.
Than before?
Which is why we as activists need to counterbalance that. I mean, that's always the fight, right?
But there's always the backstory, right, of what's actually going on in Washington rather than what we're seeing.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, I think maybe we could get, I don't want to, if candidates want to jump in at any point, this forum is for you. So if you're not talking, I will find clips. If you have certain things you want to bring to the table and discuss, by all means, please jump in. But if I play some things, I'm hoping that, it just sort of spurs conversation. So if no one's got anything right now, want to jump in? I've got a new Meltzer clip. It's not the same one.
I do.
Okay. Jump in.
I find it interesting that we got a bunch of libertarians on here tonight, guys. Like, we need to gang up. I'm just kidding. One of the things that struck me about the events of this week, the legal stuff that came out of the appeal, is the idea that in order for the British government to extradite Julian, they has to be guaranteed the same rights and treatment in the United States that a citizen would. So that brought up the whole First Amendment thing. And it made me think about the Constitution and how people think about the Constitution in the first place, or how they regard it. And a lot of people understand it mistakenly as the government granting rights, when in fact it's just the government acknowledging rights that belong to all human beings and that they are pledged to guarantee. Now, they do a lousy job of that quite often, but the fact that came out really has a lot of meaning in how Julian's been treated already, how the government, the federal government, and in particular the intelligence agencies, treat people around the world as if they don't have rights, and how even when they engage people, arrest people, or whatever, they're supposed to treat them accordingly, with constitutional rights, and they do not. And I think that the statements, what I heard, the statements that were brought up by a lot of people involved in this persecution, claim that Julian did not have First Amendment rights, and now he's going to have them, at least temporarily, while if he ever gets in the custody of the Department of Justice and has to be treated. Of course, the government's going to.
He doesn't have to. They just have to they just have to assure.
Right.
That
that's the trick. They're going to lie, and
of course,
it's
the United States government.
Exactly. We're on exactly the same wavelength, Misty. So there's this what's happening, at least outwardly, with the extradition, will outline some interesting parts of the Constitution and human rights in general that our government constantly ignores. And that should be a point of conversation as we talk to people about this issue, is where do the rights that are in the Constitution come from, and who do they belong to? And hopefully sway people that way. It's a lot more esoteric argument than most people are willing to listen to, unfortunately. But those people that are sympathetic, maybe Democrats who aren't aware of it, progressives, liberals, whatever, might be swayed by that sort of warm argument in a way that they're not already.
What I find, if I can just jump in really quickly, what I find super interesting about the whole he has to be granted First Amendment protections is that we already have a court case around the CIA spying scandal, both in the United States and in Spain. But the one in the United States I find interesting because they were trying to claim that United States citizens did not have constitutional protections if they were not inside the United States. But somehow the First Amendment wasn't applied to Julian Assange because he's not an American. That was the whole thing that Pompeo was saying the whole time. So I just think it's very much another case of the United States exposing itself for its hypocrisy and wanting to have its cake and eat it too all the time. So,
yeah, we should probably, I cannot think of the press organization right now. He's in New York City, but this one guy that follows that case.
Inner City Press.
Thank you. So we should maybe link some things that if people want to, find out more about that. Yeah, it was, I mean, we know what they did to some of the journalists like Stefania Marizzi. They opened up her phone and everything when she went in the embassy, but she's not an American. So yeah, it was American citizens that visited and had their rights violated. I have to.
William, were you going to say something, William? I saw you unmuting there.
Well, I was just going to point out that I believe it was a district court in Chicago area just granted Second Amendment rights to a non-citizen person over the citizens who live in the Chicago metropolitan area who have restrictions against having a handgun. This person apparently had fought the charges from 2020 and have moved forward with that case, and they got a ruling in their favor saying that they had a Second Amendment right. So you think that would extend to anyone on U.S. soil, and us as citizens can reasonably expect, as citizens who exercise our rights, that anyone could possibly be armed in the United States, who traveling on foot or whatever, and police, when they encounter us, they always ask us if we're armed. So they are always expecting individuals they encounter to be armed as well. So that was a ruling that just came across. And I don't see why that wouldn't apply in a First Amendment case as well and allow someone to grant someone those rights as well.
Well, there's a reason the regime doesn't want civics and Constitution taught in public schools. Those of us who know what it says and aren't necessarily scholars can already see through a lot of this, but a lot of people, most people don't grow up learning that or respecting that, or
Well, and I always think it's important to drive home the point for people who might be watching who are unfamiliar. Julian Assange is not American. And so the United States is seeking to charge a foreign journalist under our Espionage Act while affording him none of the protections of the First Amendment. And so, again, like I said, they want to have their cake and eat it too. And I think that what people need to be very mindful of is what that essentially means is that the United States is seeking global jurisdiction over information and journalism. That's what this case really boils down to, is that one single sentence. And if that doesn't make your blood run cold, I'm not sure if you have any, because that's terrifying to me.
Absolutely. And that, I know, Misty, you've seen the clips that I've been playing recently from attorney Bruce Affron. And this was, I'm going to play these now because it's critically important. So Joe Lauria and Bruce Affron were on Assange Countdown to Freedom with Randy Credico, and they brought up this issue of jurisdiction. And attorney Bruce Affron said that his U.S. attorneys should go now and file for dismissal. And I've been pushing, asking about this because I've never understood how this could be. I do understand that would not solve anything for U.S. journalists, obviously. But at this point now, I mean, it's about saving his life, I think. And it would also kind of put the brakes on the U.S. being the world's police and pulling someone from anywhere at other countries, So I want to have an answer to this. I actually asked one of Assange's attorneys face-to-face at a press club event in December 2022. And I just kept pressing him on it. And he just finally said, it's never been tested. So I don't know if there's some other reason that I'm not understanding of why they haven't done this, but I'll give you this in Bruce's words. So, okay, here we go.
I would start out with jurisdiction. I would move to dismiss this on the grounds there is no extraterritorial reach, and therefore Assange should not even be brought to the U.S. And he's not really a fugitive in any real sense. He was never here. He's not a U.S. citizen. The offenses were not committed here. So I think Assange has the right to go to court now, even while in London, and move to dismiss. I'd start with the jurisdiction. Right. Then I would move to the vagueness of the statute, because that is a clear due process violation. It's never been tested in any court decision, either the First Amendment end of it or the due process end.
Bruce mentioned the issue of the fugitive, and I want to just give it more explanation what that means. To try to go to court now in Virginia while Julian is still in Belmarsh and his extradition case is still up for determination, maybe by the High Court, it would mean bringing this motion now while he's still in Britain, but the U.S. could argue, or the U.S. prosecutors could argue, that Assange is a fugitive, and therefore it doesn't apply. A doctrine called fugitive disentitlement. And Bruce, you don't agree with that. Tell me more about why that wouldn't apply here in your opinion. Why he'd be able to do it now, to go now to the court to try to throw this case out, and not wait for him to be extradited here.
Yeah, there's something called the disentitled fugitive doctrine. That means that if you're not within the U.S. and you've absented yourself, you don't have the right to dismiss the case until you show up and accept the court's jurisdiction. That's the normal rule. But it has never been applied to a person who's not a U.S. citizen, who didn't live in the U.S., and who was not here when the offenses were committed, and who didn't flee the indictment. Julian Assange was never even here when he was indicted. He actually came in 2010 after the WikiLeaks publications. He wasn't under indictment, and he left in the normal course after a press conference. So he never fled the U.S. He's not a traditional fugitive. And the cases all speak of people who deliberately leave the country to avoid an indictment. Assange never did that. Julian Assange is not a fugitive in that sense. So in my view, and it's something that's sort of new because it doesn't happen very often in law, in my view, he can go to court right now, staying in England, and have lawyers in Alexandria in federal court make these motions. So I think that he should be making these motions now. I think he has the right to. I don't think he's a fugitive as the law understands.
So bear with me just a minute, because there are two other, one other equal and then one other short part to it. The second part is specifically about an amendment to the Espionage Act in 1961, I think it was, but it involved, I forget his name, it says it in the clip, but he was a U.S. official, but he wasn't on, he was on Polish territory or something. So they changed it so that it would be extraterritorial, but still he was a U.S. official, not a U.S. citizen. So I don't see how that applies, but it is a bit confusing. So here's part two.
When it was written in 1917, the Espionage Act covered any activity in the United States, any territory of the U.S. or on the high seas. And there was this incident in Warsaw in 1958 or 59 when an American diplomat was found in bed with another woman by Polish security services. They showed him the photographs and they blackmailed him to get documents out of the embassy. When he left U.S. territory to go onto Polish territory to give those documents over, he could not be charged under the Espionage Act. That incensed one member of Congress who got that part of the law dropped. But as Bruce points out, they never replaced it with anything, so it's not exactly clear what the jurisdictional issue is. And Bruce, in the piece, goes through some text and case law to show about how jurisdiction works in the U.S., including Supreme Court decisions. Bruce, can you talk a little bit about the jurisdictional issue for Assange and why you think that the U.S. under the Espionage Act does not have jurisdiction over Julian Assange?
What the Supreme Court has said very clearly is that a statute must clearly and expressly give the U.S. extraterritorial jurisdiction in order to prosecute. And those words were chosen by the court really for due process reasons. Assange, sitting in London or in Reykjavik, believes he's not within the scope of U.S. law. Yet the U.S., using a vague statute, now attempts to haul him into the U.S., and he's sitting in jail in Britain for 2 years now during an extradition proceeding for that very reason.
4 years.
Well, yeah. And so what the court has said is you can't do this. Congress can't reach out across the seas unless Congress specifically says so. And the Espionage Act has absolutely no language that would allow that inference. It says U.S. facilities and U.S. bases can be the subject of a prosecution if someone takes records or documents from them. there's not the slightest hint that sitting in London or sitting in Reykjavik or anywhere else, and you get an email from Chelsea Manning with documents, that will lead you into prosecution in the U.S.
Okay, so last part, really quick, 43-second clip, is where Bruce is talking about the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, I believe. And basically what that says is if you've done something like through a U.S. bank or something that ties you to the U.S., like if they could have proven that he hacked something, which we know that isn't the case, they have no evidence of that, but that would tie you physically there. And so that could mean you're within jurisdiction.
There's something called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which you may have heard of, and that regulates bribery in foreign countries. And what the U.S. says in that law is that if the money for the foreign bribe goes through a U.S. bank, or if the company that pays the bribe has stock trading in the U.S., then that person giving the bribe or the company can be prosecuted here. In other words, we create this geographic specific connection to the U.S. in the law to gain extraterritorial power. None of that exists in the Espionage Act. There's really no legal basis for the U.S. to prosecute Assange. And this entire extradition proceeding is really based on the absence of jurisdiction.
So I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, but I'm going on what Bruce has said. And this was quite a while ago, maybe at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. I just want an answer. I want to know why this hasn't been an avenue. Anybody have any idea or want to jump in on that?
I wish I knew. I would also like the answer to that. I think that it's difficult. I've asked questions of the legal team previously. I think it's obviously they want to hold strategy close to the vest. I think that they're a little cautious on publicly speaking about the case, as they should be. But I think it's really difficult for me as an activist to know where to put pressure, how to go about talking to people about these situations when I don't have all of the information, or at least some of the information. And a lot of this stuff they do not talk about. And if I can just really quickly, in the chat, We Need Critical Thinking asked for a short clip on how to call your representative or what to say. We actually have scripts. Paula's got them on her Twitter page. I've tweeted them out previously before. I can send that to you if you would like. Or also our friend Halo Benson in Tulsa does these great activism in a box things that she will send to you if you would like one. And those also include scripts that you can use to call your representatives.
And I think I can pull this up here. Hold on 1 second and I'll show you. Well, this is one of Paula's tweets anyway. This may not have exactly what you need on it.
Yeah, that's not the script. So generally speaking, at least in my experience, I make a lot of phone calls myself. And generally speaking, you will mostly get an answering service. You leave a message or whatever. Here recently, I've noticed I have been getting more human beings, which I'm not sure if that's just election year, they're staffing more or whatever it happens to be. But I have been speaking to a lot more humans lately. It's very easy. It's just be very brief. Just give them your name, whether or not you're a constituent of theirs. Please don't limit yourself to just your own elected representatives. I call everybody. I have no shame. You call, just tell them your name, whether or not you're a constituent or, whatever, and just say, I'm calling to ask for your support on House Resolution 934. This is the future of the First Amendment. I think that it's incredibly important. You don't have to go into a huge amount of detail. Generally, they just take a quick message for you. And that's about it. It takes maybe 2 to 3 minutes per phone call. It's very simple. But if you would like a script, I would certainly be willing to send you one. Or like I said, I think Paula's got one. I can try to find it actually while everybody's chatting. So I can give Kelly the link and she can put it in the chat.
Okay, cool.
You guys are all libertarians. So, I mean, there's a certain where this all comes together and what Kelly's been showing tonight has been the overreach of government, vagueness of statutes, laws, the willingness of the government to interpret the law however they would like. And of course, as Phil commented on as well, this whole idea of where do our rights come from. So in your campaigns, I mean, the easy question to ask is, how do you factor all this into your campaigns? And I know the answer already because you're libertarians, but, James, we haven't heard from you. If you'd like to talk about how this fits into your overall campaign and why this is important for you.
Great question. I would actually like to address the part where you said it was very vague. And so that's the real issue with the espionage law when I was looking into it. is that they made it so vague that they could just prosecute anybody. And I think that we're seeing this with this case is that they're even trying to do it in a jurisdiction that's really not ours. So that's unfortunate, and it's definitely government overreach. Definitely, we need more protection with the First Amendment. And this is why the House bill that you guys are looking at is very important. So when I look at this from a campaign standpoint, I go a little bit more broader, and I look at the First Amendment rights. And I even on the Senate run a couple of years ago when I was running against somebody who in their own city as mayor was telling people they can't fly flags on their own property. So the Democrats, this was a Democrat, have really failed on the First Amendment rights. And so I think that is the need I need to address is where are our rights going? And with these vague laws, how do they actually apply? So it'll be interesting to keep following this case, but I think the vagueness is what we really need to address.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I feel like, Democrats, they've kind of ushered in this, mass surveillance state and all of this because I think a lot of it was fear of Trump. And I kind of wonder, okay, well, you're scared of that. What if he gets back in office? And you've helped usher in all this stuff. So I feel like they just kind of had blinders on, and it sort of colored the lens through which they looked at these things, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, definitely. And these laws, if I can quickly go over this, the point that we're seeing is they're actually now just being used on political enemies rather than actually addressing any lawlessness. So we're seeing very vague laws that can just be distributed to whoever we don't like at the moment. And when we don't protect the First Amendment right for everybody, and we're only selecting certain groups, that becomes a very dangerous point.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I heard Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi talk about this recently, how it's strange that free speech has now just become an issue on the right. I mean, it's just so crazy.
I think that's inaccurate. Sorry.
Well, that's the perception, not that it has, but that.
Yeah, I mean, you have Republican governors currently calling for people to be censored for speaking against Israel. So it's not, to me, it's not Democrat or Republican. This is a bipartisan effort to silence dissent, period.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is an American thing. This goes back to the founding of the Republic. If people want to ever read a great novel about this, William Safire's Scandalmonger is about the first newspapers in the U.S., and how the politicians reacted to them in those very first years, throwing people in jail, murdering people. I mean, this is the part of the human condition. But this gets to the idea of why we have a constitution, right, Phil?
Well, even Lincoln was closing up newspapers, and the one of the most sacred people in our history supposedly was doing that. Yeah, it's pretty shocking. And when I talk to this issue about people, I try to start with something simple. I think as libertarians, and I think libertarians here tonight will agree with me, sometimes we get lost in the weeds on describing issues of the Fed or whatever. We start teaching a class while we're having a discussion with people. I think most people would agree, though, with the premise that our government, both parties, our government lies to us and that they conceal information from us. And regardless of their political persuasion, there's evidence of that, on both sides, from whatever side they think is friendly or whatever side they think is the enemy. And if we start there and then just talk about and then introduce the more particulars of the issue of Julian being in prison for what he did, then there's a lot more sympathetic rather than starting with the nuts and bolts of it, and rather than starting with the man himself, because obviously we're all very sympathetic with Julian himself, but it's much bigger issue than one man in prison, obviously. So if we, and we don't want to, by talking about Julian himself, it becomes easy for people to recycle those old, lies about, sexual assaults in Sweden and things like that. That's why we need to steer away with him in particular and talk about this is an issue of a person who published information about terrible things that nobody wants their government doing. None of us want our government doing that, pretty much. And he's being punished for it. And it's another example of our government lying to us and concealing the truth from us. So let's work against that concept, regardless of where we might find it, Republican, Democrat, right, left, whatever. Generally, as libertarians, we reject the right-left paradigm anyway. But if we just go down to the principle of fairness and what people think their country is about or think the Constitution is about or the First Amendment, usually that's an appeal that could at least get somewhere, I think, with people.
And we've seen the government become increasingly overbearing too, and especially the executive branch. The last 4 years, they've exercised some of these things and mandates and things that they have kind of overreached on. And I mean, Julian is not a U.S. citizen, but yet they're trying to hold him to some sort of U.S. Standard or something, and not affording him the same rights as a U.S. citizen would be afforded, which is absolutely ridiculous to anyone who believes in the First Amendment right and to be able to share the truth and push it forward. If he's not physically responsible for obtaining these documents and he's just merely showing these documents that he has obtained, that doesn't implicate him in any crime. That just lets him be the messenger of what came to him leaked from these agencies themselves.
I think it's fair to characterize our federal government as a rogue state. Absolutely. Against our own Constitution, against any international conventions of the way people are supposed to behave and nations are supposed to behave together. And to acknowledge that they will do anything, kill people, lie about it, steal, anything that we can imagine, they have done and will do. And that's really why Julian's in prison, is because he was exposing the dirtiest of it.
And I was deployed to Kuwait in 2012 or 13 and worked under the Obama and Biden administration and was instructed as a public affairs specialist to lie to the American public about us not being in Iraq anymore, when in fact we had to go back into Iraq to make sure that we cleaned up what the contractors were paid hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to do, did not complete. And we had to send our soldiers back into Iraq in plain clothes. So these were things that the public didn't know that was happening during that transitional period of time too. That administration was asking us as public affairs specialists to lie to the public, knowing that we had troops there on the ground doing work that these contractors were paid exorbitant amounts of dollars to do that they didn't complete.
There's a great account on Twitter. The guy's name is Steven Semler. I know, Matt, you retweet a lot of his stuff, and he covers a lot of that, where the money's going like that. And I think it should be very transparent, but of course it's not. I think Eric are you there? Are you frozen, or do you want to jump in? I can't.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. Hopefully my connection will stay up for a little bit. Yeah,
Okay.
I think this definitely goes way beyond the right-left paradigm and the two-party system. We can see this with how the Democrats are favoring the war in Iraq, where, people who are exposing truth and shedding light on this stuff, they're going to be the next target. So I think it's critical right now that we really put pressure on our members in the House of Representatives to get on board with this resolution. I think a good place to start, and I haven't looked too closely yet to see who all is co-sponsoring the resolution, but a good place to start putting pressure would be those folks who did not vote for the TikTok ban. I'm sure some of them at least have already signed on to the resolution, but probably not all of them.
Yes, exactly. I think you cut out when we were talking about that. There's an activist, Paula Iacella, with Assange Defense Boston, and she's been really working hard on that. She got the list of the people that were against the TikTok ban and kind of worked from there. So, yeah, definitely. Wow. So we're getting near the end here. I really do want to play this Meltzer clip because it's something. It was recorded a couple of years ago on Assange Countdown to Freedom. Daniel Ellsberg has a little tiny bit in the middle here. But it was before another one of the hearings. I don't even remember which one now. There have been so many. But he's talking about how the appeals process is playing out. And it stuck in my mind back then because I remember he kind of predicted then that this was going to have to go all the way to the Human Rights Court, which is terrifying because I know, Misty, you've probably read, I've read that if that happens, if it's allowed, then it can take 15 months to 5 years to go through
This was
that
the
process.
game plan. We know that. They wanted to drag this out for as long as human. We know that because Julian himself released that information in the Stratford files. There's an email conversation taking place where they're discussing how to handle their Assange problem. And one of the ways that they discuss is, well, we'll just tie him up in legal stuff for the next 25 years. It's exactly what they're doing. And they're doing it for a multitude of reasons. First and foremost, they wanted to silence him and shut down WikiLeaks, but he's also serving as a warning. He is the proverbial head on a stake outside the castle walls. He is the warning to all other journalists across the globe and whistleblowers as well, that if you come for us, this is what we will do to you. And it's been very effective.
Okay, so I'm going to play this and then maybe we can discuss it. Here we go.
This has never been about the law. This has been a plot. And in my book, I call it the appeals stage of this case, playing out the plot. I hope I'm wrong. But I do not expect the law to be applied here because there's no way, as I said, that he could be extradited legally. And I think it's very important to be aware that this is a very professional team of lawyers on the US side. They know exactly what they're doing and at what instance they need the UK system to say yes to extradition. It's the last instance, not the first one.
Well, you seem to be telling us that there is no way that Julian is going to see his children outside prison, that this is going to happen. That's the way you can't escape that inference from what you're saying.
Obviously, I hope I'm not right with all of my assessments, but I fear that I am. And that the only possibility is for his legal team to cross appeal. And in each cross appeal, at each instance, to bring along all those questions of press freedom and political offense and so on that has not been appealed by the US. So they cross appeal just to make sure that at each instance this is still being discussed. And then if they lose at the end with the Supreme Court, Assange's legal team, they can still appeal to the Human Rights Court in Strasbourg. And there, if they have to debate political offense and surveillance and all of these things, there is no way, I think, in my assessment, that the European Court of Human Rights would allow his extradition. I think that's where the actual, biggest chance is in the legal system that he might not be extradited.
So let's ask the question, and I've got an answer for it. What is the best case scenario from the DOJ's point of view? They've already prosecuted him, persecuted him. He's in prison. He's suffering, very ill. He's already served as
keep him there.
Already served as a deterrent, right? Is already scaring off other people from doing the same thing. They don't want him to come to the United States, maybe for the reasons that you mentioned earlier, Kelly, because they might lose here. There might be a rogue judge, or the Supreme Court might do something that they don't expect. They'd rather have him die at Belmarsh. Then that disincentive still exists for people to blow the whistle, and it never gets to the point where people in the United States care enough to try and move their own government to change.
Well, and that's why they don't want to bring him here, in my opinion, because I think that they've done a very good job. Mainstream media in the United States has done an incredible job of avoiding this topic of conversation. They do not talk about this trial. When they do, it's very skewed, heavily spun. And so I think and you're absolutely correct, they do not want to bring him to the United States, especially right now during an election year. Absolutely not. They don't want to do that. It opens up a whole host of conversations they do not want to have. First and foremost, why are we extraditing a journalist for doing journalism? A lot of people who haven't asked that question before will suddenly be very curious, but also I think it opens the conversation up to the actual content of the leaks, which is what gets lost in this whole conversation. Somebody mentioned it earlier that it's been very heavily focused on Assange. That's intentional. They want it focused on Assange. They want it focused on his personality. Oh, he's weird, or he's gross, or he's mean, or he's a traitor, or he's a hacker, all of those things, because it distracts away from the contents of the releases. And they do not want to, especially right now, I think the Biden administration wants to very desperately avoid conversation of war crimes crimes, which was what was exposed, because they themselves are facing quite a few accusations of those things. So I think that if you're asking me what I think the end game is for the Department of Justice, I think they've already achieved it, but I think at this point they're just trying to find a way to kind of step back from it slowly, kind of try to save face, but also continue it for as long as they possibly can to keep him silenced. And again, just to continue that whole using him as that warning shot for everybody else.
It's probably safe to be suspicious that the British courts are playing along too, even though there obviously merits to his appeals to extradition.
You think?
Yeah. Let's. I think that what even does us on this call, sometimes we get kind of caught up in the framework of how it should work in explaining things, and we should be mindful of the framework of how it does work, and never put anything
or doesn't work.
Yeah, or doesn't work. How things actually happen or don't happen, as the way of explaining and then understanding what's actually going on. Right.
I'm glad the whole thing didn't shut down. I didn't know that.
I was wondering where you went.
My internet was gone, and I am hardwired, so I don't know. Who knows? Interesting timing, but who knows? I wanted to ask Matt. Did you already ask the question like you usually do? I guess you kind of touched on it, but how do you guys talk to people in your districts? Can you find people are receptive to this?
Yeah,
stuff?
that's probably a good way to wrap up.
Yeah.
So as you discuss that, and make sure you let people know where they can find you, where they can follow you, how they can support you, and folks who are watching, please check these guys out and please follow and support them. And they've got the courage to speak out for Julian, for press freedom, for transparency, and so please support them.
I always try to encourage people to speak up against corruption, fraud, waste, abuse, bring to light those things, and especially those individuals who are suffering right now, who are behind bars or are extradited, into these court cases beyond their will. It's absolutely appalling to me as an American with the First Amendment right myself, and who has brought state and federal documents to light myself, and and to have to go through those sort of things. If I were to be thrown in jail because of those documents to be shown the truth, it would absolutely be devastating to me as an individual. And they tried to find, every way they could to demonize me for bringing those things to light too. I mean, just look at the whole array of documentation that was released in all of this too, and all of the CIA secrets and things like that are dabbling in dark programs across the seas that have been doing. I mean, these are things that the government doesn't want people to know, that we're lighting these fires, that we're starting these and being the instigators and causing these issues throughout the world. And and for that to be brought to light, I mean, the government, it should be scared at some of the stuff that has been brought and shown to the people.
So James, do you want to?
Yeah, I think when we're relating to our constituents and the voters, we always have to bring it to a level that they actually care about. So they may not care about this specific case, but I guarantee most of them care about the First Amendment in some form. In my view, everybody's for the First Amendment till someone says something they don't like. But the point is that we can't protect it just for our own end goal. We have to protect it for everybody. And so we bring this issue to their attention by bringing it to something that's important to them, specifically regarding the First Amendment. And Ms. was right earlier when she was saying that Republicans attack it as well. We saw book banning. And so no matter what the issue is whether it's the book banning or whether it's the flag in the yard that they're opposing, we can bring those issues that our neighbors care about and relate it to this larger issue, which is the First Amendment for free speech, for the press, and especially overseas. And that's, I think, how we relate to voters. I think that sometimes getting in the weeds, we start to lose them. So we got to bring it to issues that matter to their neighborhood.
Yep. Eric?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. James. I think given, what we're facing with the federal government, with them wanting to silence not just reporters, but, anyone on social media who's putting the truth out there for people to see, this can easily be an issue that people grasp onto, where in the past, maybe with Assange, they haven't, really looked too closely at that or considered it too carefully. But people are willing to listen now just because of everything that's going on. It's an easy way to make connections with a lot of our foreign policy, with the TikTok bill and all the silencing. So, I wouldn't be afraid to bring up this case specifically with people either. They're a lot more skeptical about the mainstream media these days than they were a while back.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm gonna Phil. Do you want to say anything else before we go?
Just briefly, it occurred to me that another reason that Julian's kind of the perfect target for this sort of thing is that he's not American. If he were, I was listening when Williams said that, if he got arrested for releasing documents, people would have a lot stronger connection with First Amendment rights to an actual American citizen than they do with an Australian. And that makes it a lot easier or a lot more difficult for us to relate, get the people that we speak to in our campaigns and our districts to care, because he's not, an American. We have special status in our own citizens' minds.
Wow. Well, I really hope maybe some of you can meet in person, those of you that don't know each other already, and keep talking about this out in the community. Check out Misty's show for sure. She does all kinds of stuff if you want to just learn more about the case. And with that, I guess we will go out with
Hey, Kelly, can I just really quickly, I just wanted to give
an
an update for We Need Critical Thinking. I texted my friend Halo about the script. I also DM Paula. She's not gotten back to me yet. But Halo said you can DM her on Twitter. It's at Halo Benson, HALOBENSON. And she is more than happy to send you the script that she uses. Paula also has one as well. I don't use one when I call, so I don't have one on hand. I should, just in case somebody asks for one, but I just, spout my mouth off. So, but just when you're making calls, don't be rude. Don't be aggressive. Just be very calm, polite, but forceful. I mean, be very upfront about where you stand on the issue, and just make sure that, and call a lot. Be very annoying. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. So that's the public pressure campaign. As we mentioned, we're not going to see justice in the court system. That's not a thing. It's going to take mass public pressure to get Julian Assange freed and to protect the future of the First Amendment. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you all. It was really great to meet you. I find it very encouraging to see candidates like you guys running. So thank you very much.
Shout out to Matt for being on with Judge Knapp this week too.
Oh yeah, you do that regularly. How often are you on, Matt?
Every week.
Every week.
Yeah, very, very fortunate to be in that stable of really impressive people. But Judge, of course, is big supporter of Julian and of course First Amendment. But yeah, hey guys, thank you all so much. Thank you for running the campaigns you're running, for supporting Julian, of course, and Misty. You're the best. You really are. Thank you.
That is incorrect, sir, but thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye now.
Whistle back in 2006 was a matter of a password and a couple of clicks to safely send files and protect the source while sharing all the important bits, of course. With a database that's searchable all around the earth that exposed the rich and powerful, showed us what they're worth, showed us the corrupt ways they run affairs. From Iceland to the Indies to almost everywhere, making clothes transparent on emperors all round, everywhere that whistleblowers are to be found. WikiLeaks was too effective, it had to be beaten out. Let there be no doubt. Now they want to kill the messenger while most of us stand by, just waiting for this prisoner to die. Ellsberg blew the whistle on war crime. corpse. He called out for someone to step up this time. With WikiLeaks assistance, when Chelsea Manning did on torture and mass murder, she blew the lid. And the war on WikiLeaks went into overdrive as the authorities tried hard to make sure it couldn't survive. Now they want to kill the messenger while most of us stand by, just waiting for this prisoner to die. Charges plucked from history, the Espionage Act is being used against Assange under the Extradition Pact. Not just Republican war criminals, but Democrats too had it out for him now for telling what he knew. When the DNC rigged the race, got Clinton the nomination, put Sanders in his place. Now they want to kill the messenger while most of us stand by, just waiting for this prisoner to die. Now they'll call him a foreign agent, say he should be shot. They'll call him a narcissist, whatever defamation they got. They'll say he's not a journalist, unlike the ones in Moscow, reporting on the criminals that we allow reporters to report on. We give them the Nobel, while this Australian is caged and sent to hell. Now they want to kill the messenger while most of us stand by, just waiting for this prisoner to die. Now they want to kill the messenger while most of us stand by, just waiting for this prisoner to die.